How's it going, everyone? Mufara here. Welcome to Hopelessness Radio. I hope you enjoy the content. Peace and blessings to the people. How's it going, everyone? Mufara here. Welcome to Hopelessness Radio. I am hoping that you've all been well. We're going to be continuing with the Your Body Speaks Your Mind podcast series. And so, the podcast series is inspired by this book called Your Body Speaks Your Mind by Deb Shapiro. And I recommend those of you that have the spare time and cash that you give it a read. I found some of her opinions and perspectives very interesting and insightful. And I've actually used some of them in assessing myself. So, the chapter is called The Language of the Body. And essentially what this chapter is about is how we can use symptoms as a means of maybe perhaps looking towards deeper issues or underlying problems within ourselves, mentally, emotionally, and psychologically. So, I've decided to split the chapter into two halves because the second half was part of the same concept, but it's a completely separate idea. So hopefully sometime tomorrow I'll have the second part out. She starts off the chapter by stating that your history is vital to understanding yourself, and that your biology is your biography. And we can all agree that we are, in a sense, the accumulation of our experiences, past, present, and potentially future, right? And so what we go through on many levels of our being, it has an effect on how we function today. And so she says that a physical symptom is usually the first indication that something is out of balance. And so it may be connected to the past because it has arisen out of previous events and conditions. And so, when we go through things like trauma, or we get injured, or we go through whatever happens in life, really, that in a way has its way of affecting our physiological development moving forward. And so children will easily bury confusing, frightening, and unhappy feelings in their unconscious, so as to not to have to deal with the pain for whatever circumstances they may be. So sometimes, I believe it's an inherent adaptive mechanism for survival that we have, that, we suppress pain and whatever temporarily or however long we need to in order to function. And ultimately that may have an effect in us long term that we may not know about. And so the next subsection is called accumulated history. So in the Bronx, it was found that children with cancer had suffered twice as many recent crises as other children. And so 31 out of the 33 children with leukemia had experienced a traumatic loss or more within the 2 years preceding. And I'm not saying this is a causal or is a direct correlation and, this causes that. No, obviously there's too many variables, but I wouldn't be surprised, unfortunately, if things like this had a role in the onset of deadly diseases and illnesses like cancer. And so I guess it's also important to also look at that dynamic and have that perspective to see that maybe these things do have an effect on us in ways that we don't even know. And so she actually gives a whole list of other symptoms that may appear and what they may potentially mean. And obviously take it with a grain of salt. It's just someone else's perspective. And so with regards to a stiff neck, she says that a neck may become stiff when there's a conflict in knowing which way to turn, which direction to move in. It also may be a resistance to seeing another person's point of view. This one resonated with me also pretty well. A drooping head is a sign of inner hopelessness and an inability to face whatever lies ahead. When you go through your low points in life, which are constant for the most part, highs and lows, you tend to have your head down, right? And you also start to doubt your ability to face whatever comes ahead. And so perhaps, when we're in those moments, we don't say to ourselves that we're hopeless. But the way our symptoms are manifesting, what we do, the way our body behaves, is just that statement in of itself. And so she states that things like fever and cold or inflammation, this may potentially mean that something or somebody has found its way inside of you and is causing you a disturbance. Obviously, we know that pathogens do that. But it'll be interesting to look at it in another way. If maybe someone is actually irritating you, someone is causing a reaction within you. I don't know if it's kind of weird to look at it, but maybe societal circumstances, maybe family dynamics, things bring out a certain reaction within your body, as if an illness has invaded you. Not saying it's sad, but you never know these things. And so she goes into state in response. You become red, you become hot, inflamed, which are all symbols of rage or unexpressed emotion building up inside. And so, she states that cold feet and cold hands, this has to do with circulation and the withdrawal of blood and potentially love. So she correlates blood and love, the emotion of love. And so the withdrawal of blood and the circulation of it may be potentially the withdrawal of love, leaving you cold or cold-hearted. And so, and then she goes on to state that there are 3 types of tissues within the human body. You have soft tissue, you have hard tissue, and you have fluid tissue. She says similarly, you can correlate these 3 tissues to 3 non-physical states of being your spirit, your thoughts, and your feelings, which is quite an interesting way of looking at it. And so, she goes on to state that bones represent the deeper core within ourselves, and that broken bones may represent a deeper level of conflict within ourselves. And so for those of you that have ever experienced those type of injuries, it'll be maybe interesting to look back at, maybe if you can recall what was potentially going on in your life, within your mind, within your conscious, within everything, and how it correlated and it coincided with perhaps getting injured, right? And so, your thoughts and experiences directly affect the state of your nerves, and they are visible in the condition of your muscles, your skin, your flesh, reflecting the continual movement of change within you. Things like layers of fat are built to protect painful memories and the events and thoughts that have formed your fears and your prejudices. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being fat at all. It's just interesting, how there may be a tendency to eat to build protection from your external environment, simply, to endure and to overcome whatever you're experiencing, whatever pain you're experiencing. And so it's always interesting to have these different dynamic of looking at things, because maybe it brings more closure, or it's a more effective way of handling yourself moving forward. And so she goes on to say that your innermost beliefs find expression through the soft tissue, through your shape and the ability to move. And so rigid tendons tend to reflect rigid tendencies, just as tight muscles reflect an inner tightness, such as fear or anger. The fluids correspond to your emotions and feelings. And so, you tend to boil with anger, or you overflow with love. So I found that pretty interesting, just the way she wanted to look at that, and how symptoms may be your body trying to tell you something. It may not be, it could just be a symptom, and it is what it is. Your body's just going through whatever shit is going through. But again, I guess for those of us that always are trying to look for multiple angles of looking at things, I guess it's interesting. And so then she actually talks about the left and right side of the body. And so most of you who are familiar with psychology, there's already been a lot of talk about, left brain, right brain. So I'm not going to go too much into it, but she says that left brain people tend to be logical, rational, verbal, and they are prone to rapid fire thinking, and they like to process, things sequentially. And so right brain people tend to be visual. They tend to process information. Right brain people tend to be visual thinking, who process information in an intuitive and visionary way. And so in her body mind map, the right side of the body represents the masculine principle in both men and women, and it has to do with the ability to give and to be dominant and assertive. And in both men and women, the right side of their body reflects the relationship to the masculine principle within themselves. The left side of the body represents the feminine principle in both men and women, and it indicates the ability to ask for help, to receive, and to surrender. And so issues on the left side in men reflect difficulty in being nurturing and sensitive to things like crying and showing his feelings and being in touch with his creativity. And so she says that a lot of the issues in this chapter, at least, highlighted that, when things tend to be focused on one side, you may be related to the principle that you may be in conflict with. So sometimes when you are having trouble receiving, or you don't want to take, or you don't want to be compromising your emotional strength and stability, perhaps you may be disintuned with the left, the feminine principle within yourself. Or when you tend to be dependent on others and you struggle to take accountability and responsibility and to cultivate, trust within your own self and to look after and believe in your own abilities, then you perhaps disentuned with the right side of your body on the masculine principle within yourself. And so it's interesting. It's a very unique way of diagnosing and looking at things and where they manifest. A sprained left wrist. Have you maybe perhaps been, giving too much or taking in too little? And so your body, an injury is indicative of that imbalance. And so, again, this whole book is not like a way of diagnosing and stating this is the cause of that. It's just basically leveraging off these symptoms in a way to maybe look to see what your internal state of being is and how it may correlate to what you're experiencing externally. The next half of this chapter has to do with the chakra system, and that's a very deep thing in of itself. It's not as simple as just talking about energy centers and whatever fad that we see on YouTube and everything. It's actually a very complex system, which requires maybe a bit more of an extensive explanation. So I hope you guys found the first half useful. The recommendations I would have is just investigate some of the symptoms that you experience and, assess your mental and emotional state, or your spiritual state within those, within those symptoms manifesting themselves. And so, thanks you guys for tuning in. I lost my wording a bit near the end there, but it is what it is. It's hard to kind of have this big ass book and, read off it and everything. It's tricky as it goes. So, I hope you all have a blessed rest of the week, and thank you for tuning in. Peace and blessings to the people.